Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is now 1 o'clock. The Committee on Education, Finance, and Taxation now convenes this public hearing. Public hearing notices were given to the media. The first notice on Wednesday, July 18, 2018. Second notice on Monday, July 23rd. And for the record, today is Wednesday, July 25th, 2018, and the time now is 1 o'clock. The committee will hear and accept testimonies, both oral and written, on the following: the referral, the appointment of Elizabeth T. Fisher, position for member, Alcohol Beverage Control Board, term length is 2 years. And Bill 286-34 COR, as introduced by Michael F. Q. Nicolas, an act to add a new Chapter 37, Title 5, Guam Code Annotated, relative to establishing a policy for false claims filed with the government of Guam and providing for whistleblower awards to individuals who report underpayments of taxes levied under the laws of Guam. I'd like to recognize that Senator Nicolas has joined me today. The general rules for public hearing. The conduct of this public hearing shall be as follows. Those testifying will be recognized in the order of sign-up on the sign-in sheet. Written testimony may be read. Lengthy written testimony should be summarized to about 5 minutes. Written testimony shall be submitted to the committee. Please provide our legislative staff with your written testimony for photocopying. Testimony shall be confined to the substance. Persons will be allowed to present oral testimony only once. Once you are done, you may be asked to remain in the room for questions or for additional testimony, as may be desired by the members of the panel. When you speak, please make sure that the microphone is on. Just press the button and the mic will turn red. And that you speak into the microphone. Please state your name for the record. We will now begin to hear testimonies on Ms. Elizabeth T. Fisher. We have us today, Ms. Fisher and Mr. Ray Lanetta. Ms. Fisher.
Good afternoon, Senators Agustin and Senator Nicolas. My name is Elizabeth T. Fisher. I am honored to have been nominated for a seat on the Alcoholic Beverage Control Board, and thank you and your colleague who are taking the time today to consider my nomination. I'm currently the head of compliance at ANZ Bank, where my job is to make certain that the bank complies with banking laws and regulations. In my current position, I routinely review new regulations and enforce laws, much like the power every member of the ABC board has and every compliance inspector has to enforce the laws on alcoholic beverages. I also respectfully served on the Guam Banking and Insurance Board after being appointed over a year ago. Recently, my good friend Ray Lanetta mentioned that there was a vacancy on the ABC board and explained the vital need to fill this position. I expressed interest in the position of which I feel would be much more challenging, and for this reason I appear before your committee. Like my late stepfather Jim Underwood or my cousin Phil Flores, and like many of you, I come from a family which has always stressed public service. Regulating the importation, manufacture, and sale of alcoholic beverages, as well as enforcing the laws on alcoholic beverages, play a vital role in our island's public service and public safety. I'm excited to be able to play a role in ensuring that the ABC board continue to be worthy of the confidence the public places in them. Si Dios mercy.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. Senator Nicolas, or Mr. Lanetta, I'll allow you to speak first. Sir.
Good afternoon, Senator Agustin, Senator Nicolas. My name is Rainy A. Lanetta. I am currently the chairman of the Alcoholic Beverage Control Board, and I've been with the ABC board now for 6.5 years, going on my basically fourth term. I'm here before you to recommend confirmation of Elizabeth Fisher to the ABC board. I've known Ms. Fisher for quite some time now. We serve also as volunteers with the employer support of the Guard and Reserve. And so we volunteer with that organization. And so I feel that her experience, skills, and capabilities will enhance the ABC board. Right now we're at a critical stage in having only 3 members in the ABC board, and adding her to our roles will help us tremendously in fulfilling our duties ensuring the compliance of alcoholic beverages in Guam. We recently had a situation in which 2 of our board members were off island, and we had an organization that was having a critical, was having an event, and so the board could not meet to approve their application, and so they went ahead and had their event without alcoholic beverages. That kind of situation is rare normally, but we do not want to have those kind of situations where businesses and organizations who are counting on us to provide support to them, approve their application, basically, not be able to serve alcoholic beverages or have their functions because we were not able to meet as a board. Before I joined the Alcoholic Beverage Control Board, we had issues in meeting quorum, and basically, since I've been a member of the ABC board, we've curtailed the serious problem of not having quorum. So it's right now it's rare, but I've asked Ms. Fisher to join us in hopes that we can fulfill the number of 5 members into our board, basically. And so I ask that the senators confirm her appointment into the ABC board. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Luna. Senator Nicolas, do you have any questions you want to ask? Not this time. Ms. Fisher, as I read your testimony, more challenging, to be on the ABC. How was it with the Insurance and Banking Board? How was it there when you were there? I'm just curious because I do oversee that agency, so I wanted to find out has there been much activity or was there a lack of activity that because the ABC will always have activity. They're always gainfully employed. Could you please tell us about the Insurance and Banking Board?
Yes, sir. During my a little over a year tenure with the Guam Banking and Insurance Board, I attended 3 meetings. The meetings are held quarterly. A couple of them were canceled. So then there was a couple resignations from the board as well. The Director of Revenue and Tax had resigned at the time. And we simply just attended meetings. And most of the conversation was around insurance. And in comparison, I feel that, I have much more energy to just, rather than just attend meetings, to go out and do field work, which I understand happens in the ABC board.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Fisher.
You're welcome.
I've went over your resume when we heard for your appointment on the Insurance and Banking, so I have no problem with submitting this to the committee for confirmation. All right, Ms. Fisher? Unless you have anything else you want to bring up to our attention? Mr. Lena, is there anything else? If not, then we've completed the hearing on Ms. Fisher. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to just, the committee will continue to receive testimony on Ms. Fisher's nomination for the next few days by Friday. Please address your written testimony to the Committee on Education, Finance, Taxation, and submit it via email, Senator Joe S. Agustin @gmail.com. My office located on Rand Care Building, 2nd floor, Suite 3, 761 Marine Corps Drive, Tamuning, Guam. Now we will now hear on Bill 286-34 as introduced by Senator Mike Nicolas, an act to add a new Chapter 37, Title 5, Guam Code Annotated, relative to establishing a policy for false claim filed with the government of Guam and providing for whistleblower awards to individuals who report underpayment of taxes levied under the laws of Guam. I would ask for Mr. Stake, Mr. Brad Human, sir, if you can come up, and Mr. Cobble. Sir, are you going to be giving testimony? Okay, please come forward. Just have a seat, and we'll start with Mr. Stake, an attorney. Oh, all 3 are in support of it. Great. We need to take care of the whistleblowers. Thank you. Senator Nicolas, if you...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just real quick. First, appreciate, Mr. Chairman, the expeditious hearing of this bill. It is timely with respect to the financial conditions of our government. Bill 286-34 is actually a merger of previous bills introduced, Bill 220 and Bill 205. Both had similar components, particularly the parts that allowed for whistleblowers to be able to come forward and expose whether there's false claims being filed against the government or whether there are taxes that are being unreported to the government, and to allow for an adjudication process and the awarding of basically settlements and payments to these individuals who come forward and expose these underpayments and taxes or these false claims. Mr. Chairman, this bill is actually modeled after what has already passed in a previous legislature with respect to the alcohol and tobacco, the tobacco tax stamps that we passed earlier, where we created a mechanism by which the public would be able to, through an observational basis, expose whether or not there's an undercollection of taxes. What's resulted in just the introduction of that bill, it hasn't even been implemented yet, but just the introduction of that bill has resulted in an increase in tobacco collections of about $6 million for this current fiscal year, and the recent revelation of an additional $14 million in tobacco taxes alone over the last 3 years that is currently catching a lot of media attention with respect to that liability. What we're hoping is that with the passage of Bill 286, we can open the door further for this type of outcome, where false claims filed against the government or other individuals or companies that are underreporting their taxes can basically be brought forward by whistleblowers who are willing to step up and acknowledge that these things are happening, and in return, not only be part of the adjudication process, but also share in the recovery of the monies that were lost to the people of Guam. I'm very grateful for the individuals who have come forward to testify, Mr. Chairman. I thank you for making time for us today. Thank you, sir.
Sir? Mr. Stake, we'll start with you, and then we'll jump to you, Brad, and then we'll go to Mr. Cobble. Okay? Sir? Just if you can just turn on the mic, press the button in front of you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'm in support of the bill, and my background, very briefly, is that I went to the George Washington University Law Center procurement program, which does public procurement instruction for government employees and procurement attorneys. And I also, after that, worked, first I do just about everything that's civilian. I spent a few years in the Office of General Counsel at GSA. Then I went up to the Civilian Board of Contract Appeals, which was then called the GSA Board of Contract Appeals, and they do procurement disputes with the federal government on the civilian side. Very briefly, just I don't want to divert too much, but I want you to give a little. I want to give you a little background. The ASBCA, the Armed Services Board, does all federal military procurement appeals. The Civilian Board does all civilian procurement appeals. So you kind of understand where it all fits. And then after that, I went to the Defense Logistics Agency, which does a lot of procurement for the military, as you gentlemen, I'm sure, know. And there I was a fraud attorney. I worked in procurement fraud. And I also did a stint with the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington, D.C., where my boss was Joseph DeGeneva, who's on TV now. And then I spent some time, there was a gap in there, and then I spent some time with U.S. DHS in law enforcement, and then I retired in 2007. So I kind of started with uniform and left with uniform. And I am in support of this bill, and my experience tells me that this is necessary in Guam. It's been enacted in a number of states, and I think this bill does several things that are very beneficial to Guam. One is that it reins in bureaucrats. I believe what we don't want is the will of the taxpayer being thwarted. And I believe if the legislature targets funds for a certain purpose, whether it's the Congress of the United States or the legislature of Guam, they are elected representatives of the people, and they represent the will of the people, and that will should be fulfilled. And I believe we need methods to prevent that from falling into the hands of unelected bureaucrats and a sort of shadow government type of atmosphere, which unelected bureaucrats decide the will of the people. And we don't want that. I don't think the taxpayer of Guam wants that. I don't think the taxpayer of the United States wants that. And another very beneficial aspect of this bill is it will deter the waste of taxpayer money in procurement fraud, and that's a big waste. Sometimes you have contractors who are fraudulently overpriced. They go in highballing with amount of money that is more than necessary to do the job, and they end up benefiting more than they should that way. That becomes a false claim. A false claim is any demand on the government for money that is fraudulent, and the requirements for that are that the false claim has to be knowingly false, and it has to be central. It has to be substantial to the falsehood. And if you have those two elements, you have a false claim. It's not that difficult to prove if it's there, and if it's not there, it's very difficult to prove. So we're not abusing the private sector. We're not abusing all our honest people. We couldn't exist here without honest contractors. We need them. They're essential. So this is the proof of this is sufficiently difficult that honest contractors don't have a thing to worry about. All it does is benefit the taxpayer. And so for those two reasons, to prevent the misuse of funding and also to prevent procurement fraud and abuse, I advocate this bill. I think it was well written, well done. I think you have a lot of procedural safeguards in there, a lot of due process in there. I can see it was well thought out, and so I support it. And any bill you do, well eventually, it'll go through a process, and you're going to find that sometimes it'll be adjusted a little bit in a right way or a wrong way, but it's going to be adjusted. That's going to happen. But I definitely support this bill. It's a great effort, and I hope you get it through, and I hope it's not vetoed.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Huseman.
Huseman. Good afternoon. Chairman San Agustin, members of the committee, I want to thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today about the need for greater enforcement of our current tax regime. I would like to thank Senator San Nicolas in particular for his leadership in an effort to make sure we as an island community are maximizing our current laws. Guam, if the newspapers are to be believed, faces a fiscal crisis. There are daily reports of tax increases, furloughs, and work hour reductions for government employees. To confront these challenges, there are additional reports of tax increases and/or increased enforcement. Like almost every Guam resident, I am concerned with an ever-increasing tax burden, but I am encouraged when our leaders take steps to ensure that our current tax laws are fully enforced before turning to tax increases. I'm an attorney on island. I represent clients almost exclusively in civil matters. And in that capacity, I represent clients who file whistleblower complaints known as Form 211 applications. These clients are exercising their rights under the current law, and in some cases, they highlight millions of dollars of underreported or unreported taxes. Currently, I have one client who has filed a whistleblower complaint, and the letter acknowledging the complaint indicates that any investigation could take, quote-unquote, several years. This is not an attack on the people at Rev and Tax, as they have limited staff and enforcement is usually not an easy or quick job. Several years, however, is still several years, and Gov Guam, especially in the current financial condition, needs to be able to ensure faster collection. One way to ensure faster collection is to make sure the enforcement division is fully staffed. This is going to be difficult, however, amidst talks of reduced hours and furloughs. Moreover, full staffing is not a guarantee of the result everyone wants, full enforcement of our current tax code. What is needed is the ability to maximize and leverage to the maximum extent possible the efficiency of our enforcement regime, and this is where the private attorney general provisions of Bill number 28634 comes into play. The typical private attorney general case involves a party bringing suit to enforce a law left unenforced by the ordinary enforcement mechanisms that are currently in place. This private attorney general doctrine gives the courts the ability to award money, inclusive of fees and costs, to a party who is vindicated for bringing an enforcement action if that enforcement action benefits the public and requires private enforcement. Put simply, Bill number 28634 allows for a private individual to bring an enforcement action on behalf of Gov Guam if, for whatever reason, Gov Guam declines to bring that case in the first instance. Bill 28634 is a way to increase enforcement, and this is important to me anyway, without upfront costs to Gov Guam. Moreover, as Gov Guam can intervene and take over any of these private attorney general cases, it allows the government the final say as to what the cost will be in any enforcement action. But for cases where Gov Guam cannot, or in some cases will not proceed, a private attorney general provision provides for enforcement that will not happen otherwise. In other words, it allows for maximum enforcement of our current laws with minimum costs or risk to Gov Guam. And for these reasons, I wholly support its passage. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Calvo.
Hi, Hafaday. My name's Ryan Calvo, and thank you guys very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Senator Nicolas, for having this meeting. I'm here today to support the bill. I think it's a great bill. First of all, it'll help to recover money for the government. I've got privilege to some documents that say we have over $625 million in questionable spending, funding, or whatnot. Also, too, it'll help to protect the whistleblowers. A lot of times they're going to risk their livelihoods going after these companies, individuals, or whatnot. I'll also provide a written testimony to your office supporting the measure as I read more so into the bill. That's all I have to say, but thank you very much and good job.
Thank you, sir. Senator Nicolas, do you have anything?
Just real quick, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to appreciate the testimony from all the individuals present. Mr. Huseman, I wanted to particularly touch on how you brought up Form 211. Form 211 applies to the federal tax code, but there is no Form 211 for local taxes, and that's where Bill 286 comes into play, Mr. Chairman. We don't have a mechanism by which we can go after these claims that are on the local tax side. If somebody is not paying their taxes on the federal side, they can go through Form 211, and Revenue Tax is obligated through the federal mirror code system to proceed with that kind of process. But because we don't have the same kind of laws on our local tax side, our tobacco taxes, our alcohol taxes, our gross receipts taxes, our property taxes, there is no mechanism by which these taxes can be pursued similar to the way they can be pursued on the federal side. So that's the key point in the need for us to pass Bill 286. If we do not pass Bill 286, we do not have a local mechanism by which we can go after local false claims and local tax evasion. This gives us that mechanism. So I'd like to thank all of the individuals who are present here to testify to help underscore the point. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Six, and thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Being a former criminal investigator with Department of Revenue and Taxation, I look forward in voting yes on this bill, Senator Nicolas. If this will give us the authority to do what we need to do at Revenue and Tax, I'm just hoping that the people of Guam, when they see it, report it. And if there's somebody in the government that's doing it, don't be afraid, report it. Because that's the only way we're going to be able to fix the problem we have today. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That being said, and there's no further testimonies, the committee will continue to receive testimony, hopefully within no later than Friday, Please address your written testimony to the Committee on Education, Finance, and Taxation and submit it via emails to Senator Joe S. San Augustine at gmail.com. My office is located on Rand Care Building, 2nd floor, Suite 3, 761 South Marine Corps Drive, Tamuning, Guam. Sizuz Marcy for your attendance and participate in today's hearing. And for those at home, thank you for watching. Good afternoon.